Well, that time of night again. Super Bowl / Hall of Fame week in the NFL. Time for the final top 10 this week. It's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed doing every single top 10. This, of course, speaking to you right now is your miraculous host, the one, the only, James Krasnerick, hosting another episode of Real Steel Sports. Let's review my top 10s from the previous week. On Monday, top 10 Super Bowl games. Tuesday, top 10 non-Hall of Famers. Wednesday, teams that fell short of winning the Super Bowl. Thursday, top 10 defenses in league history. And now today, in the most controversial list you'll receive, the top 10 Super Bowl winning teams of all time. Let's get started. The number 10 greatest team to win the Super Bowl, the 1976 Oakland Raiders. The Raiders were a team that were kind of like grouped in a lot of ways like, Steve Young and the 49ers were when he took over for Montana. Couldn't win the big one. The Raiders had been in a Super Bowl 9 years earlier, losing to Green Bay in the last game Vince Lombardi ever coached. And since then had been to several AFC championship games. But they hadn't broken through yet. And then in 1976, they finally broke through. They finished 13-1 and would go on to win Super Bowl 11 in Pasadena, defeating the Minnesota Vikings 32-14. The Raiders were a very, very physical team. They were underrated in the fact that they were a lot like the Steelers, a team that could run the football, would dominate the line of scrimmage. A team that would more or less just try to pound the hell out of you. And memorable players, such as, receivers, Cliff Branch, Fred Biletnikoff, who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, tight end Dave Casper, who's in the Hall of Fame, quarterback Kent Stabler, who should be in the Hall of Fame. That year, Stabler threw 27 touchdowns and for 2,737 yards. Completion percentage was over 66%. The defense that year, just as fierce. Very, very physical unit, whether it be cornerback Willie Brown, who returned a pick six in the Super Bowl to end the game, whether it be free safety Jack Tatum, who's maybe the most notorious hitter in league history. You also had George Atkinson on there as a corner. He was one of the most physical defensive backs in league history, constantly pound receivers. They were a physical team. In the playoffs, they really stepped up their game. After scraping past the New England Patriots, they defeated the two-time defending champion Pittsburgh Steelers, even though they were without Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier, the Steelers were, their two leading running backs. And then, of course, absolutely drubbed Minnesota in the Super Bowl. What makes that Raider team so good was their offensive line. Really, it was. Because Minnesota, that was the era of the Purple People Eaters, one of the greatest defensive lines in league history, with Hall of Famers Carl Eller and Alan Page, and should-be Hall of Famer Jim Marshall. I mean, the Vikings that year were second in points and sixth allowed in total defense, and again, another season, one of the greatest defensive lines in league history. And in that Super Bowl, Oakland obliterated them for 266 yards. Just absolutely blew them off the line of scrimmage. There was nothing Minnesota could do. They couldn't move the ball against the Raiders. They committed 3 turnovers. Fran Target had another abysmal Super Bowl performance. And the way that defense played as a whole, and the way the offensive line would protect Ken Stabler and just blow blockers off the line of blow defenders off the line of scrimmage to open up running lanes, that was a hell of a team to stop. Moving right along, the number 9 greatest team of all time. This will surprise a lot of people. The 1999 St. Louis Rams. Now, you think of the 99 Rams, you think of offense, you think of the greatest show on turf, you think of Kurt Warner, you think of Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, all those great players. But lost in the shuffle That was the number 4 ranked scoring defense in the league. The Rams were scoring 33 points a game and allowing 15. I'll repeat that. 33 points per game, 15 points allowed per game. That's just ridiculous that a team can score that much more than its opponent. And you look at that season. Only one game did they fail to hit 20 points. Did they fail to hit 21 points? In all but 5 games they hit 30, and 4 times they went over 40. The playoffs, the Rams rolled through the NFC playoffs, defeating the Bucks in the NFC Championship game and the Vikings in the divisional playoff round, putting up a combined 60 points in the 2 games. In the Super Bowl, a long pass from Kurt Warner to Isaac Bruce defeated the Tennessee Titans at the end of the game 23-16. Now, Kurt Warner had one of the greatest seasons a quarterback ever had. Completed 65% of his passes for 4,353 yards and 41 scores for a rating of 109.2. Fran Tarkenton, a Hall of Fame quarterback, has called it the greatest season a quarterback ever had. Because don't forget, Trent Green was supposed to start that year. And he got hurt in the preseason. Kurt Warner steps right in, second year in the league. He had played arena football, though, and in NFL Europe, so he was familiar with the NFL. And he just tore defenses to shreds. He had a great receiving core with Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, 2 guys that might end up in the Hall of Fame. Oz Hakeem, who's a very, very talented receiver. Marshall Faulk had the only other 1,000 season in league history, 1,000 yards rushing and receiving, next to Roger Craig, who did it in 85 for the 49ers. Defensively, they were a very good defense. They had cornerback Todd Light with 6 picks, and defensive end Kevin Carter with 17 sacks, making the Pro Bowl. They also had very, very productive seasons out of several other players in the defense. Defensive tackle DeMarco Farr with 8.5 sacks. And rookie cornerback Dre Bly, who'd go on to become a Pro Bowler twice, would have a very, very productive rookie year with 3 interceptions and 16 tackles. A lot of people think of the Rams and they don't want to give them enough credit. But, you know, that was a team that played several really good teams that year. They did. I mean, the Vikings they beat pretty good in the first round of playoffs. The Buccaneers gave them a tough test, but it proved they were a complete team by beating them. And then the Tennessee Titans, who went 13-3 in the regular season and a very, very stout defense, St. Louis was able to find a way to beat them. Kurt Warner throwing for a Super Bowl record 414 yards. They were the greatest offense that ever won a Super Bowl. The greatest offense for a single season team. 32.9 points per game, 33 if you round it up. And again, the defense was very, very underrated itself, you know. And you had other great players in that team that don't get enough credit. You know, London Fletcher, who's now a Pro Bowl linebacker for the Washington Redskins. Back then, he was playing in the middle. He was the man in the middle for the St. Louis Rams. Mike Jones, not the rapper, but Mike Jones, who made the tackle in the Super Bowl. Again, a very, very talented player. Actually played a few years for my Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, this team from top to bottom had so many great players on offense and defense to absolutely deserve to be in my top 10. Moving right along. Number 8, a team that could make an argument you might want to put them even higher. The 1992 Dallas Cowboys. Let's not forget that the Cowboys, 3 years prior to this, were 1-15. 1-15. That's just about as abysmal as you can get. And they were voted one of the worst teams in league history, number 8 overall. Hiring Jimmy Johnson after the 1988 season. The purchasing of the team by businessman Jerry Jones. They had Norv Turner, who's a relatively successful coach in San Diego, be their offensive coordinator. And Dave Wanstad, who's been a very, very good college and NFL coordinator, play and coach, call the plays for the defensive side of the football. Scoring 25.6 points per game and allowing 15. The Cowboys finished first in the NFC East and second in the NFC at 13-3. And the NFC, they rolled to the Super Bowl, defeating arch rival Philadelphia 34-10. The Super Bowl favorite 49ers 30-20 in San Francisco. And in one of the most lopsided Super Bowls in NFL history, they beat the Buffalo Bills 52-17. Forcing 9 turnovers in that game. What made Dallas so good back in those days was the fact that they could beat you just about any way they wanted. You had Pro Bowl quarterback Troy Aikman, who's in the Hall of Fame. Running back Emmitt Smith, who's an All-Pro in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You had receiver Michael Irvin, again, Pro Bowler, again, Hall of Fame. And the defense, too. And Jim Jeffcoat had 10.5 sacks. Charles Haley, a pickup from San Francisco, had 6 himself. He's the only one of the few players in NFL history to have 5 Super Bowl rings, 2 with the Niners and 3 with the Cowboys. And they were the number 1 ranked yardage defense in the league that year. The defense was very stout. And the offense it was not so much an offense that was bright lights, look at us. Michael Irvin, the receiver, might have been. But it was an offense designed, they were going to put the game away early, and they were going to pummel you with the running game, as evidenced by their second-ranked total of 20 touchdowns on the ground, and fifth-ranked total of 2,121 yards rushing, and fourth-ranked total of 500 rushing attempts. They were also tops against the run and in fewest runs allowed, 345 runs attempted against them, and only 1,244 yards. And the fact that they were so dominant in the playoffs, another reason why they're so high on my list, the fact they absolutely torched two of the best teams, most underrated teams in league history. The Eagles in the early 90s, who had a very, very good defense, and the 49ers, with Steve Young, and of course the Bills, the best team ever, one of the best collection of teams not win the Super Bowl, considering they went 4 straight years. That's an incredibly, incredibly dominant postseason out of any team. Alright, those are the first 3 entries on my list of the 10 greatest teams to win the Super Bowl. Coming up next on my list, we have to go back in time to when pro football wasn't even emerged. Yes, I said merged. AKA, we're going back before the merger. Stay tuned, everybody.